I guess I was waiting for more people.
We're all set.
As soon as she gets back, I'll start. Okay. All right, is everybody ready? All right, I would like to open the Leavenworth Board of Zoning Appeals meeting, previously scheduled for January 28th, but because of a lack of a quorum, we're now meeting on Monday, the 11th of February. We do have a quorum with only one commissioner absent. Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. If everyone has had a chance to read through those and either has any comments, questions, concerns. If not, I'd like a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
All right,
Second.
moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. There's no old business, new business. 2019-01 BZA 5151 South 4th Street. Hold a public hearing wherein the applicant, Luxury and Imports LLC, is requesting a variance from the development regulations to allow for an increase in the allowed impervious area for the property located at 5151 South 4th Street. Staff report, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you said, this is a request for a variance for the property located at 5151 South 4th Street, known as Luxury and Imports, for a variance to allow for an increase in the allowed impervious area for the property. The development regulations allow for a maximum of 50% impervious lot coverage. That would include buildings, impervious pavement, anything like that. The owners of Luxury and Imports are currently under contract to purchase the rear half of the bank property to the north, or the eastern half of it. And we do have a plat submitted to staff to combine the purchased portion with the existing Luxury and Imports lot to create one lot for them. So that would result in about a little over 5.5 acres for the new Luxury and Imports property, and leave the bank with about a little over 2 acres. So Luxury and Imports would be proposing to, on the purchased portion back here, construct a new parking area. I've got it. There we go, and I believe you all have this as well. So just oriented down here is the existing Luxury and Imports building, and then they would propose to, in several different phases, build more parking and a potential building on that portion of property that they are purchasing. And then over here, closer to 4th Street, adding some parking as well. So with the added parking that they're looking at, we'd be looking at over 50% of impervious surface, so that's why they would be requesting the variance. The Development Review Committee did review this proposal at the November 11th meeting, and the main concern was the water quality and quantity. The impervious lot coverage requirement is really about stormwater issues, and any design that comes in, any parking lot design will have to be reviewed by our Public Works Department to account for the fact that any stormwater is being handled appropriately. And that would be the case regardless of what the lot coverage was, whether it was 10% or 50%. Public Works is going to have to review that and make sure that the appropriate measures are accounted for with the stormwater. So the board does have authority over this. I'll let the chairman go through the 5 different criteria. If you have any questions about the proposal, I can answer those, and the applicant is here as well. And I would just note for the record that staff has put the issue of lot coverage for commercial properties on our next DRC agenda to discuss. 50% is a pretty burdensome amount, and a lot of other cities have a different requirement, so staff's going to be taking a look at whether or not 50% is an appropriate impervious coverage requirement for commercial properties. So at this point, that doesn't make too much difference since this is the requirement right now, but just to let you know, we are going to be looking at that.
Okay. Any questions of the staff report?
No, sir. I think it's pretty important that we do look at those limitations, especially with the new industrial park that's coming in. And we do take into consideration the technologies that have been developed, maybe since the regulations were written, in terms of pervious concrete, asphalt, and blocks.
Yep.
Was, and to tail on with that comment, when the DRC looked at it the first time, was there any consideration or any thought process or any dialogue with the applicant that any of the materials that they were going to use would not be considered as impervious, but use some other material?
Some sort of pervious pavement.
So that doesn't count against them, or is this just a pretty cut and dried, it looks like pavement, it's probably gonna be impervious, and the recommendation to bring it before us was based just on that alone?
Yeah, that wasn't specifically brought up at the time when we talked about this in November. And at that point, we didn't have this proposed parking lot layout that we have now. That's just recently come in. This is also gonna be looked at by the DRC here in the next week. We're gonna be taking a look at this. But you are correct that any sort of pervious pavement, would not be counted against that 50%.
Second part of the question is, their current lot and lot size, do they meet the requirement of under 50%?
They do not.
Okay, so they're already in
Yeah, the
opposition
existing,
to the existing?
yeah, the existing lot is probably about 98%
Yeah,
impervious,
kind
yeah.
of, yeah. Now, third and last question. And the description of the proposed building and additional parking in the rear section, that really is, are there any definitive timelines based on any of those? Because I would assume that if they did not build anything in the near future, that they would then be in compliance with their current square yardage of impervious materials. So therefore, if they chose to alter, say or build their parking lot in 2 phases, or build their parking lot and not the building right now, they would be in compliance, and so then they would only be out of compliance in the future when they did get issued the permit to do those 2 things.
I'm not sure of a timeline. The owner could let you know about that, but you are correct. Once the lots are combined, if that purchase takes place, they would be in compliance with our current regulations, since what they're purchasing is all open space, and so they would be under that 50%. But once they were to start building, they'd be inching up and getting back over that 50%
Initially, I was
threshold.
left with the impression that that's what they were going to do immediately, because they had talked about moving some of the functions out of that first building into the second, which implied they're gonna start immediately. But now I'm hearing that maybe not.
Based on what we've got, it's a 4-phase plan, with the purple over closer to 4th being the first phase, then the yellow, then the green, and the pink. But again, the owner could let you know kind of what their time frame is and what they're thinking about. If it's
And I know for them,
3-month phase or a
It's
couple
probably
years.
just better to get it all done at once, rather than tie their hands and having to come back, but just thought I'd ask, because
Yeah, and that would
they
be a
could save
business
themselves
decision.
some trouble if future phase wasn't
Could be.
5 years down the line, then,
Right.
Okay, so the applicant is here. Sir, would you?
One more question.
Mike?
Oh.
Staff?
Yeah, if you just want to go over to the mic so we can
Well,
pick you up.
he can come back and then you can,
All right, yeah,
or is
sure.
it tied in?
Well,
We can actually
it's-
ask the same question before he starts to talk.
Actually, it's more for Julie.
Yeah.
Is there no landscaping requirement for commercial properties?
There is, and so any plan that they bring in when it comes in for a permit would be subject to the landscaping, and they do have some shown, well,
Well, I think this
No, that's
might be
not
existing. It looks
yeah,
like.
so they
doesn't
would be
look like
subject
anything.
to that when that comes in for a permit, that
Okay.
we would take a look at that at
So
that time.
that will have a bearing on impervious surface, no?
Yeah, they'll have to have at least enough impervious area to plant,
Yeah, for the roots to
We just
grow
don't know how
and
much
all
that
yeah.
is.
right.
Okay. Sorry, now, sir. If you wouldn't
Can I
mind.
talk here or do you need to do the mic?
We
Oh,
need to take the mic So
microphone.
we can pick you up for the recording.
I guess you could take the mic off and walk around if you feel comfortable with that, or it's a simple question.
So I think what we'd end up doing to begin with is we would do this in phases. The most important aspect for us is we need more parking.
In the front, or on the Fourth Street side, right?
This area
Well,
right
for
here.
display, that's what the pitch was the last time.
Okay, so what we're gonna do, this area right here is employee parking. And we're gonna move that up here so that we can fill this space with probably 40 or 50 cars that we can retail. And it just makes sense to move the employee parking and some of our wholesale cars up here. And that would be the most important thing that we do first. Secondly, we are at a space, this property, we're maxed out. We can probably hold on to our facilities, the service and body shop, you know, but we're pretty much tapped as far as how much more we can pull through the building there. So, yeah, so the parking would be number one, and then probably second would be this area here that we can also add more parking to.
And would that be a shared drive with the bank?
Yes,
Okay, so their existing entrance off Fourth Street would go away. That would be the new entrance that would be shared, owned by you guys, but shared with the bank.
no,
Or the
they're
credit
gonna
union.
own
They will own it?
they still own.
Yeah.
So we're gonna come up to this
Oh, south
corner
of
of
the
the
drive.
drive.
Right,
Yeah, you can see that line right there.
that's the
So
drive.
the new property line would be just south of that existing entrance to the bank. This entrance would be staying, and there would be a shared access agreement so that both the bank and
Okay.
Luxury and Imports could use it.
That's a little bit
And
different
I
than
did,
last time.
and I did forget to mention, this drive down here, the entrance off of Eisenhower will be staying as well.
What's gonna be shared then? Say that again?
The existing entrance, for the bank, is that right? Troy?
Yes.
Yeah, that existing entrance up there,
So it'll have access to the rear?
yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes, this entrance will be open and there will be a shared access agreement between the bank and Luxury and Imports
Right.
that both
And they'll go back
businesses
there
have
somewhere, yes.
rights to use both this entrance and the entrance off of Eisenhower.
And so, sir, what is your intent for, as far as use or paving or leaving it alone for that land immediately to your north and between yourself and the bank and the entrance to the bank? Right there.
Oh, that's just display.
Okay, sir.
It's just pretty much a low-lying drainage ditch right now. So,
Yeah, and I think what we'd kind of mentioned last time while we were waiting for the meeting,
This one is actually easier
This-
to read. It's the last
the
thing.
existing,
Okay, sure.
That
Luxury and
entrance part.
Imports
I
entrance
just
off
looked
of
at it.
Fourth Street is potentially going to be closed. So the one right here is the one that is going to potentially close, and that's not a definitive thing, but that's what, had been discussed. But yeah, the bank entrance will for sure remain open.
and then also, if you don't know this area, the bank has an entrance a little bit further north off Fourth Street too.
Yeah, where their ATM machine is.
Right.
Yeah.
To the north.
And their
Yeah.
parking lot, really?
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay.
So you intend to keep the existing building when and if you build a second building?
Yeah, well, so, yeah, what we would probably do is move our detailing department and move them out of that current building and create a new structure.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So
No,
he's-
sir. Oh,
Well, I have one more. So he's currently at about almost 100% impervious.
Yeah,
And the new plan would also be almost 100% impervious?
Yeah, it'd be getting pretty close.
Okay,
Yep, so there would be some, yeah, around the perimeter, still some green space, and then of
Right.
course they would be required to have parking islands within the parking lot that would count as pervious surface, but yeah, for the most part, it would be paved.
Any other questions of the applicant? Thank you, sir. You can- I guess I must have missed it. Or is there a number we are actually wanting to approve, or just approve this drawing?
Yeah, the
Which
way
reflects-
that I suggested wording the action would be to approve or deny the request for variance from the development regulations to allow an increase in allowed lot coverage with the design of any development subject to review and approval by city staff in regards to water quality and quantity issues. So
Kind of open-ended.
kind of open-ended with it being subject to review by Public Works, since they're really the, the deciding.
I didn't know if there was a not to exceed or a 10%
No, we
above
didn't,
the
no.
current regulation or not. Which kind of hints towards, when you're reviewing that at the next DRC, if you could make it a little more
definitive.
concrete, definitive, yes, a little more definitive, so that it isn't open-ended. Or
Right.
if open-ended is the right answer for this zoning district or this type of business, then
Yeah, so that's what we'll be
that would
taking
be
a
nice
look
if
at.
you had a table to go along with it, like some of
Yeah.
the other regulations.
Sure.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Any discussion amongst the board members before I go through the 5 questions?
One last question. Ted, do you already have a landscaping plan? Have you developed that at all?
No, but that's part of the agreement that we have with the bank also, is that they would approve the landscaping and the buffer between the bank and our building.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Do I necessarily have to close the public hearing, or we just proceed on with the votes? Or
Yep, since you opened it, yeah, before we talked to you, you need to
Right.
close it.
Motion to close the public hearing? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. A request for a variance may be granted upon finding of the board that all of the following conditions have been met. The board shall make a determination on each condition, and the findings shall be entered in the record. First one, that the variance requested arises from such condition which is unique to the property in question and is not ordinarily found in the same zone or district and is not created by an action or actions of the property owner or the applicant. Start with Commissioner Gervasini.
Yes?
Ken?
I agree, but I think we need to add the, at what point do we add the condition that you were talking about? Is that
At the
end?
very
So that'd be in your, in
I
the
mean-
final action, the motion.
If it's gets enough votes to approve, then we can
Add that condition?
add conditions.
All right, I'm good with that then.
And I agree.
I agree.
Second, that the granting of the permit for the variance will not adversely affect the rights of adjacent property owners or residents.
I agree.
So do I, especially because they've already negotiated with the seller, who will be the neighbor.
Agree.
Agree.
Third question, that the strict application of the provisions of the development regulations from which the variance is requested will constitute unnecessary hardship upon the property owner represented in the application. Consider,
Agree.
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 That the variance desired will not adversely affect the public health, safety, morals, order, convenience, prosperity, or general welfare.
Well, I agree with the proviso about with regard to the water quality standards and water quantity standards. dictated by the Public Works Department.
And or note, whether it met it or not, that requirement still exists, and so it applies across the board.
That's correct.
Whether or not this is approved or not approved.
Yes, Roger.
Okay, and I agree.
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 And the last one, the granting of the variance desired will not be opposed to the general spirit and intent of the development regulations.
Agree.
Normally I disagree, but in this case I'll agree because I know that we're gonna take that to the DRC for review.
And the same for me, agree in knowing that it's already been coming to be studied.
Agree for the same, with the same proviso.
Okay. In granting of the variance, the board may impose such conditions, safeguards, or restrictions upon the premises benefited by the variance as may be necessary to reduce or minimize any potentially injurious effect of such variance upon other property in the neighborhood and to carry out the general purpose and intent of these development regulations. Is there or are there any conditions, safeguards, or restrictions that the board wishes to attach to the pending approval?
Wherever that statement is that Julie wrote.
Yeah, it's at the very bottom under action. On the second page of your report.
Yes.
To incorporate that into?
Yes.
Yeah, so if you just, if that's acceptable to the board, if you just read your motion with that language, then that's what would be entered into the record.
I make a motion that we add the condition to approve the request for the variance from the development regulations to allow an increase in allowed lot coverage with the design of any development subject to review and approval by city staff in regards to water quantity and quality issues.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries. Okay. Next item on the agenda, is there anything else that we need to
No,
do?
no.
Next item on the agenda is the election of officers. Chair and vice chair.
Yep. Yep, I'll see you next Thursday for DRC. So you can vote tonight, or you can wait until the next meeting, or the next time we have all 5 members present, if you'd prefer. It's up to you.
4 out of 5 is pretty good, considering
As
our
of
track
late.
record.
We do
So good.
So, assuming, whatever the feeling of the board is,
I think we should keep the current officers.
you can make that motion.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Now, do we want to say who the current officers are?
Probably should for the record.
Probably a good idea.
Mr. Vice?
Are you good with that?
Current chairman. Good with that. Mr. Bogner, current vice, Mr. Gervasini. All right, we have a motion, do we have a second?
Discussion.
Discussion?
Have none?
None.
I guess I'll second.
Call the vote.
All in favor, raise your right hand. Abstain.
You could just decline if
I-
you want to.
I thought about that all night. That was probably, if I had to vote for myself, I should just abstain. All right, are there any other issues?
No other issues?
Oh, did we want to discuss the, well, you said the DRC is going to review
The lot
Perme-
coverage
permeability
requirement
and lot
for,
coverage.
yeah, for non-residential.
okay, if the consensus is to modify the current planning and zoning regulations, do you need us to make a formal motion to proceed to that?
No.
Once that DRC or staff can take that directly
Yeah.
to the city manager and the city commission?
Correct. Yep, staff can bring changes, yeah, and they would need to be approved by the planning commission and then the city commission, but the BZA wouldn't need to provide a motion.
Okay, all right. But if we want to try and amend these 5 questions or have them
Okay, yeah.
re-looked at by staff
Yep.
and determine.
I'll just do that. Yeah, check state statute and see if this is the exact language in there. I believe that it is.
Yeah.
But it's been a while since I've read through that portion of the statute, so I'll double check
In a condition like tonight, they were fairly obvious, but there have been some instances
Yes.
where it's not quite
yeah,
one or the other,
yeah,
and I end up saying, well, okay, gosh, I don't. There's the literal interpretation and the intent.
yep. I'll take a look
And
at statute, and I can also talk to the city attorney and see if there's any way we could clarify the language or
Simplify or
change it or
clarify
anything, so
or-
yeah.
or-
We'll take a look into that.
Keep the same intent, but maybe make it a little more yes, no.
Right. Yep, we'll take a look into that.
Okay, so we don't need.
No, don't need a
All
motion.
right. But you can include that in the minutes of the meeting. All right. Seeing no further actions, I move that we adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting's adjourned.
All right. Yep.